things that I think that my students and my teachers find particularly annoying about me is my tendency to think. More specifically, it is my tendency to talk about what I think, especially since I usually go through a phase where I think that what I think is correct. That doesn't last forever, however, which is good. But unfortunately, when I start to think that what I think is not correct, I just go on to start thinking something else, which I then spend time talking about and thinking that the new thing that I think is correct. So, anyway, here is what I think. Tai Chi students, like myself, talk about pushing an opponent without using force. And we talk about the idea that Tai Chi can allow you to defeat a much bigger and stronger opponent without using force. We are taught this. We have methods for developing this skill. We even demonstrate how it works. Some of us then go on to get smacked down by martial artists who clearly did not get the memo and do not understand that the Tai Chi guy was supposed to be able to kick their butt. Part of the problem is that Tai Chi teaches profound, advanced martial art concepts to people who are not very advanced. It is like teaching quantum physics to preschoolers who then start to think that they can bring a dead cat back to life by putting it in a closed box and lying about it being dead. Hashtag Schrodinger's cat sequel, The Resurrection. Concepts and principles that were historically taught to experienced martial artists are now taught to beginners who have no context for them. I teach Tai Chi and other martial arts to beginners, but many of my students come to me after years of training in other martial arts. At times, half of my students are black belts or equivalent from other styles. I must say that it is sometimes quite intimidating to teach Tai Chi combat principles to people who could very easily rip my arms off and beat me to death with them. Fortunately, expert martial artists are some of the nicest people that you will ever meet. But the popularity of Tai Chi as a healing exercise means that many classes don't teach any martial art basics. Students might learn forms and toisho and two-person routines, but they never do any real combat training. They don't practice applying the principles in real situations. My friend Adam Chan once said that for most people, learning Tai Chi is like trying to build a supercar in your basement. He is right. You might be successful in building the car if you have a good understanding of the engineering and physics involved, but the car will be useless until you can figure out a way to get it out of your basement. And even then, you still have not learned how to drive. And learning to drive is not just about theory and having a good car. You also need experience. You need the time to develop skills and reaction time and a set of strategies that accounts for other drivers, and changing weather and the rules of the road. Other martial arts get the students on the sidewalk right away. Then they get them roller skates. Then they get them bicycles and teach them the rules of the road. Then they spend years upgrading the bike to progressively better motorcycles or cars. By the time that rare student upgrades all the way to a supercar, they have already been driving for years. Most Tai Chi students and some teachers have not gone past the roller skate stage of combat. But most people who start learning martial arts never get past the roller skate stage. There are many Tai Chi students who have spent years engineering their vehicle in the basement but their design is based on static vectors and simple curves, and they have not tested the material for kinetic stress. On the other hand, Tai Chi can be like turning you into a boat instead of teaching you how to swim. It can transform your body and your mind in ways that weaponize your natural instinct. Once you become a boat, you don't have to think about swimming techniques or fatigue. The boat will take care of you, and you will be better off than a swimmer when the weather turns. A friend of mine was in her 70s when thieves tried to steal her purse. One of the thieves distracted her by grabbing her left arm and shaking it and yelling loudly in an unknown language, while the other thief was supposed to take the opportunity of distraction to slip the purse off of her other arm. So this should have happened. But she had been doing a lot of Tai Chi. She had never done any real combat training. They had never practiced defense against purse snatching. But the pulling on her left arm caused her to spiral into her left hip. And this sent the first thief flat on his back. Then the pull on the purse caused her to stumble backward. She took a big step with her right foot, and the right arm shot up into the air as she pivoted around the right hip and turned in time to see the other thief go flying and he ended up sprawled out on the ground. And as these two thieves got up and ran away through St. Peter's Square, she was left standing there trying to figure out what had just happened. She hadn't tried to defend herself against purse snatchers. She just naturally responded to the uneven forces within her own body. And she stumbled, and later she was heard to comment, "Oh, look, that was White Crane Spread's wings." Now, she was not a fighter, certainly no expert fighter, but her natural instinct, born partially from her Tai Chi practice, showed how Tai Chi can reduce falls in seniors and cause falls in purse snatchers. Tai Chi develops a quality that is essential to martial arts and extremely useful in everyday life. It affects balance, power, natural instinct, and a dozen other qualities that are more fundamental than martial technique. But most martial arts only teach these principles to advanced students, or just let them discover them by themselves. Pung is a word that is unique to Tai Chi. Pung is a term that is at the basis of Tai Chi as a martial art. Everything about Tai Chi, whether for martial arts or health, is dependent on understanding Pung. Pung is the basis of all Tai Chi posture and movement. If Tai Chi were a symphony, it would be a symphony in the key of Pung. By the end of this video, I hope you have an understanding of what Pung is. But first, I want to tell you what Pung does. It can do a lot of things. Pung allows you to move an opponent or to withstand or counter their force without using force. It lets you push without pushing. It allows you to bounce the opponent's force right back at them without using force. It allows you to be unaffected by the opponent's force. It lets you do all of these things and more in spite of this all being impossible. Pung, like many subtle skills in martial arts, defies reason and common sense. I like things that defy reason and common sense because I like science. One thing I learned from crashing university lectures to impress a girl when I was a teenager is that common sense is bad science. And things that seem reasonable are false, at least as often as they are correct. For example, as early as the late 18th century, or as late as the early 19th century, the greatest doctors in Europe considered it reasonable that diseases could be caused by bad air from smelly places like swamps, slaughterhouses, and sewers. There was a lot of evidence for it. People got sick near swamps and sewers and abattoirs, even if they didn't go inside them or touch them. They just had to be near enough to smell them. But the experts did not think it reasonable at all that thousands of people could be killed by a microscopic germ. It just defied reason and common sense. Those scientists are dead now. In a fight, your opponent is literally trying to stress you out. They apply forces in various directions with confusing combinations of momentum and kinetic energy in order to move you or change your shape in ways that make you unable or unwilling to continue fighting. They might punch or push or twist or trip or throw or yell or grimace or call you names. The more these things affect you, the more difficult it will be for you to adapt to those changes. So it would seem that you either have to be harder to affect or be better at reorganizing around those changes. But there may be a third option, or a fourth, or a fifth. Oh, that would be cool. Today I will discuss pung in terms of pushing, because that is the language that Tai Chi uses for teaching this basic concept. But it should be remembered that pung can be and must be applied to striking, twisting, throws, and every other kind of attack and defense. Remembering Newton's third law of motion. When the opponent pushes you, the push happens to both of you. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. There is no simple mechanical difference between an attack and a defense. The deformation and displacement will likely happen more to one of you than to the other. This difference is the result of your relative mass, your ability to direct force through or away from you, the collective elastic modulus of each person. So the effect of a push depends on how heavy you are, how skilled you are, how you are standing, and how hard you are. Elastic modulus is roughly the measure of how hard it is to change the shape of something. Diamond has a very high elastic modulus, which means that it takes a lot of force to stretch it. Elastic bands, however, have a very low elastic modulus and are easy to stretch. There are different kinds of elastic modulus. Tensile modulus measures the stretchability and compressibility of something along an axis. Tensile stress is caused by the normal force of a push at right angles to the surface, like that. The shear modulus measures the shear ability, not the sheer ability, but the shear ability, the force required to twist or rend something. Shear stress is a force that is parallel to the surface of the material. So shear stress would do this sort of thing. Well, but not. Anyway, bulk modulus measures the stretchability and compressibility in all directions. The bulk modulus measures the force required to inflate or deflate, to change the volume of a material. In real life, all of these stresses are involved in a push. The push might start out as a tensile stress along one vector, but as the pressure increases or the body is compressed, then the bulk gets pushed outward from the inside, and changes in shape cause the push to diffuse and to change direction. The push that started you pushing one way causes forces to go in all directions. When I shovel snow, the snow does not only go in the direction that I push it, it goes sideways and upwards, and it just tries to get out of the way of the shovel. If you stretch something, you normally have to grab it and pull. That means that you're applying shear stress and tensile stress against one surface in order to apply tensile stress at right angles to another surface. So you have to pinch it in order to pull it. And you have to have that sideways stress. Anyway, it gets all mixed up in real life. In high school science class, stress was usually talked about in static terms, which made it easier to talk about and made the math a lot simpler. In reality, stress changes its target as the strain increases. If you push a chunk of coal long enough, it becomes a diamond. Or it becomes many different chunks of coal. Or it starts to burn. Or it gets pushed away. It all depends on the nature and the circumstance of the interaction. In martial arts, in Tai Chi, pung is how you manipulate the nature and the circumstances of the interaction. One of the things that pung does is align the body in a way that redirects the push into the ground. What starts out as a straight push gets redirected by an adaptive geodesic. You receive the opponent's push and you guide it along a path that curves around and through you on its way to the center of the earth. When it is applied well, pung makes the push as futile as pushing on the earth itself. When you perform pung tactically, the other person finds themselves uprooted by their own push. If this is difficult to understand, think of the archways in the Roman aqueduct at Pont de Garde, which has stood for 2,000 years. It's huge, and the archways redirect the force into the ground in a way that preserves the structure. This is different from normal post and beam construction, where the weight of the structure puts stress on the middle of the beam and causes the beam to bend over time. Pung uses that centripetal geodesic in the same way as the arch. The curve is more complex than an archway. It's more like a spring sort of coiling around the muscles and through the fascia. Each coil of the spring will break if it is poorly aligned or subjected to forces that are strong enough to negate Hooke's law. If you are not connected to the ground, it doesn't matter how good or solid your construction is, the push will displace you. And it doesn't take much effort to do it. But if the push is connected to the ground, and it is redirected, then the push will be redirected into the earth, and you won't be able to push it as easily. There are two things that people call pung, and I refer to them both often. Pung can be hard pung or soft pung. Hard pung deals with much greater forces, and soft pung deals with faster changes. So hard pung can deal with a lot of force, but is really only practical for a very short period of time, whereas soft pung makes faster changes so that it doesn't have to deal with a lot of force. A hard pung is sometimes what we do when soft pung fails. It depends on an increasing bulk modulus to support the tensile modulus. What does that mean? Okay, here. Okay. This is it is a very shiny, look how that glows in that light. Maybe I'll try this one. How about that? Here we go. So this is a stretchy blob. It is called Stretchy Blob. I bought this at LaHaye's craft store downstairs here in Aurelia. And you'll notice that when I push on it from the top, I'm applying a normal tensile force. And when I first start to push, it gets shorter. But as I add more pressure, it begins to expand and squash out, spreads out in all directions. There. And then, of course, it's quite fairly elastic, so it goes right back to its original shape. Now, if I put it in its box, like that, then the box holds the sides in. And the reaction force, or the restoration force, makes it harder for me to push down. However, if I push hard enough for long enough, the box fails and the door pops open. Now, this is how hard pung works. We selectively firm up the body in order to increase the body's collective bulk modulus, making it harder for the opponent to squash us in any direction, especially in the direction of the push. So somebody pushes on my forearm, the forearm doesn't collapse because I'm using this balanced tension in my body, in my arm, to hold that shape. And this is a very easy shape to hold relative to this shape or that shape. So this alignment is really good. And I align the chest properly and the back properly so that I can firm up the body and make it really solid in all directions so that it can't be squashed and the forces don't go out to the sides. And I align the spine so that the power goes down into the ground, and I use the core muscles to connect the top to the bottom, right through the center here. And that way, when the push comes in, it gets redirected. All of the vectors of force that I create add up to that one really good centripetal geodesic. So any forces that push the line that way or that way are balanced out. So if I apply a force this way, I apply a force that way. And I managed to create this balance between all of these outward going vectors to align with that spiraling geodesic and connect it to the ground. Sounds great. And it can work really, really well. That is how hard pung works. We selectively firm up the body to increase the body's collective bulk modulus, making it harder to squash in any direction, especially in the direction of the push. And in a fight, hard pung, combined with a tactical change, can cause the opponent's structure to fail. Boom! See? So this restorative force, boom, sends the opponent flying. That's kind of how hard pung works. That's a real simplification, but yeah, that's sort of how it happens. But the hard approach to pung is relatively static. It depends on the physical manipulation of the tensile modulus and bulk modulus of the body. That means that you strengthen the body from the core to the extremities in a way that can make you capable of withstanding greater forces. It's important that the tension in the body serves the tensile modulus, meaning that the firming up of the body does not cause one to lose focus on the direction of the opponent's push. And it does not give the attacker time to have the ability to push you in more than one direction. You don't just close your eyes and tense in all directions. You must remain aware of the push and the connection to the ground. If you only remain tense, then they can push you in any direction that they want and still affect your center. They can push your arm that way and move your center. So effective hard pung can withstand a great deal of force, but it is only practical for very brief moments. The tension must not last longer than the opponent's reaction time. This is why training hard pung requires you to work with a training partner who is able to react, not just lean on you and let the restoration force bounce you away. I don't just push on my opponent like this. I have to be able to change the direction of the push so that they can practice adapting faster than I do. Now, soft pung, by contrast, is continuous. It can remain practical over time, even as the opponent adapts, but it is only practical for a limited range of force. It can be continuous and flow and be very effective, but if the pressure builds up, then the soft pung doesn't work as well. As the push begins, soft pung engages that centripetal geodesic, redirecting the push along the curves through and around the body until it connects to the center of the earth. As the push continues, if the pressure increases, it starts to interact with the bulk. And you start having this bulk effect, and where things start to go in all directions. And then you have to have hard pung. So this is where the soft pung must adapt or die, or revert to hard pung. It adapts in a number of ways. One is by changing the surface area. The normal force is directed at, perpendicular to the surface area, and it's measured in force per square centimeters. And by reducing to a single point the surface area that receives the force, by making the geodesic infinitely thin, you can reduce or eliminate the bulk effect throughout the body. If you focus the pung on a single point, then the surface area is 0. Any reaction force, the pressure per square inch, will be undefined because there are no square centimeters. If you try to maintain a single point, the opponent will adapt and keep pushing, and then they'll increase the surface area. So you're trying to reduce the surface area, and they're trying to push more surface area. So you have to keep changing and working to reduce the surface area, even as they are trying to increase the surface area. And as the opponent, being slow to adapt, continues to direct the push over a larger surface area, they make their push more diffuse. The vectors are going in a bunch of different directions, and when they meet your single point, then the pressure approaches 0 pressure per square units of surface area. So you are continually reducing the surface area that receives their push, approaching infinite pressure per square centimeter. You continually try to achieve this perfect single-pointed engagement, considering Zeno's paradox, but confident that you will get close enough for all intents and purposes. In reality, pung does not actually achieve 0 surface area, but it does approach it. Psychologically, it means that you seek to reduce the weight and the surface area while the opponent is seeking to increase it. You each have a different strategy to the other. If you are both trying to increase the surface area, then this is what some famous teachers have called bulls butting heads. So you approach infinite pressure per square inch, going towards them, and they approach 0 pressure per square inch, going towards you. And you may ask, what happened to Newton's third law of motion? Well, it's still there. It's just that their vectors are confused, and yours are not. Of course, if the surface area were actually 0, I suppose the forces would be undefined. In the elusive perfect scenario, the engagement would be like a black hole, simultaneously infinite and non-existent. Not a thing, just a place in space-time, containing entire universes of its own, and wow. Okay, now if the opponent pushes and actually meets 0 resistance where they were expecting some, then their brain would experience a momentary programming error, like a computer being asked to divide 100 by 0, or anything by 0. 0 by 0. The real challenge to soft pung is awareness and timing. It doesn't take much surface area to overcome it, and once soft pung fails, it may be too late to engage the hard pung. If you wait too long to engage the hard pung, it's like trying to build a boat when you are already underwater. This is where conditioning is important. The boat must already be built. If you rely entirely on soft pung, you will be able to successfully push the opponent around with your body in all kinds of weird and uncomfortable looking shapes. I don't have to line up. I could walk towards a person like this, and they could push on my chest, and I can walk like this, and they'll still bounce off of me. That's with soft pung. If you rely on hard pung, you will want your spine to be in a precise alignment. Strategically, there's a middle ground, fortunately, where soft pung is the preferred quality, but the alignment is preserved more or less in case of hard pung, in case hard pung is required. So soft pung doesn't matter what shape you're in, doesn't care, and gives you the flexibility to go into all sorts of weird positions and still be engaging your opponent's center of gravity and still be manipulating the opponent's center. You get to continue being a threat to them while you are defending against their attack. This is an extremely valuable tactical advantage, so that your defense is an offense. You are attacking and defending, and their attack ends up pushing them over. So every time that they try to push or punch or throw, it always just bounces right back at them. And they end up just not wanting to fight anymore, because everything they do is like slapping themselves in the face. That's the advantage of soft pung. Hard pung gives them too many ways to get away, to escape. However, if you don't have hard pung, then you really need to be a good shot. We say, if maybe I have a nuclear bomb, but I only use the pistol. The thing with the pistol is you have to be a really good shot. And if you're not, then the opponent closes on you. When they're really close, it's too late to use your nuclear bomb. So this soft pung is what the Tai Chi classics call the needle inside the cotton. It means that the pung is sharp and thin. The opponent must not be allowed to engage with a thick cross-section of reaction force. The pung must maintain this needle-like quality all along that centripetal geodesic. If it gets thick in any part, then that place needs bulk modulus, and then the whole thing will start to collapse around that place. And you can do that on purpose, and then you are sort of like a supernova. You just collapse and then expand back again if everything is set up just right. That can work. I've done it myself, where I was sure it was over, and then I thought, oh no, I've still got this left, and kaboom, there they go. So you may be asking any number of things by now, but you might be asking, how can you reduce the surface area of your pung without reducing the surface area of the opponent's push? That's complicated and really fun to practice, and I really want to show you some of those exercises, but those will have to be in other videos. But developing the skill will refine your accuracy, your efficiency, and the timing of all of your techniques. If you push the end of a needle with your hand, it will pierce your hand, but your hand will slightly dull the needle. How much you are pierced and how much the needle is dulled will depend on the force being applied and the elastic modulus of the two objects. A flat piece of steel will be pierced less than a soft hand, and a hard piece of steel will dull the needle more. As the needle becomes more dull, the surface area increases, and the bulk modulus becomes more of a factor. Likewise, if your opponent pushes and you engage with a single point of contact, that point will be flattened over time, increasing the surface area and involving more bulk. So resisting the push will become more difficult over time. The solution is to either tense up to increase your bulk modulus, or to move in a way that reduces the force of the push and change the angle so that they can't increase the surface area. So part of the secret lies in the timing of the changing angles of incidence. If the opponent pushes on your forearm with their palm, you can engage with every bit of the forearm that is in contact with their palm, or you can engage with only a single point, preferably the point that is most proximal. If they don't recognize the change, they will continue to push against the non-resistant part of your forearm. This means that their push will be instantly diffused, meaning that most of their force will be pushing somewhere other than your center. They will need a few nanoseconds to redirect to your center. In the meantime, you will have been able to advance toward their center. When the opponent reconnects the alignment of their push, you simply roll a nanometer or two in any direction and meet their diffused force with a single one-dimensional pung. You're reducing the surface area in order to reduce the dimensions, but you have to reduce the dimensions in the surface area all the way through, so the cross-section of the centripetal geodesic has to be reduced as well. Oh well. Anyway, the result is that their push cannot gain purchase on your center, and you can continue to track their center without meeting any resistance. For you, pushing the opponent is as easy as cutting through fog with a hot knife. For them, pushing your center is like trying to chase a swarm of bees through a snowstorm with a bullwhip. Now, part of the effectiveness of pung, hard or soft, relies on the time it takes for the change in the body to register with the attacker's mind. If the attacker's push happens concurrent or subsequent, at the same time or after, the change in alignment, and the change is subtle enough, then they cannot recognize that the target has changed. So pung also has the ability to manipulate the appearance of your structure by messing with the attacker's frame of reference. The target looks substantial when it is not. It leads the attacker into emptiness, the way that a toreador's cape leads the bull. This way, the soft pung can be effective against long range and weapons attacks as well. You can use it to manipulate the opponent without touching them. Now, understanding the relationship between the physical interaction and the role of the mind is very important and does not get enough attention in martial art classes. Those who overestimate the importance of the physical are easily tricked, and those who underestimate the importance of the physical might be prone to silly-looking demonstrations and embarrassing YouTube videos. An important thing about pung is that while pung responds to the directions of the force, the push can come from any direction. This is because there is no isolated tension in your body that will attach itself to a particular reaction vector of force. If a part of your body resists in a particular direction, it messes with the alignment of that centripetal geodesic. It puts that bulk modulus out of balance. It is like putting a dam or a dike in the middle of the river. Pung is about relaxation and reducing force, not adding to it. While I might be compressed a little bit by the opponent's push, I do not use isolated muscles to resist it, and I don't lean into it. I depend on the internal structural properties of my superior posture, and I redirect the forces into the ground, like the archway in a Roman aqueduct. I let the shape redirect the force in a way that does not strain my body. I don't use activating muscles to fight back. This means that if the push suddenly stops, I don't stumble forward. Likewise, if the opponent pulls my arm, I don't fight back against it with isolated muscles like my biceps or my shoulder muscles, and I don't lean backward. Rather, I settle my alignment so that my anatomy works for me. This way, if the opponent suddenly stops pulling, I don't stumble backward like an arrow released from a bow. The normal structure of my body, conditioned by months and years of refining my alignment and conditioning my muscles and tendons and bones, enables me to withstand greater forces that try to push or pull me. The best use of hard pung is the education of soft pung. So hard pung creates tension in order to rein in the bulk effect and to constrain all of the force vectors so that the centripetal geodesic is unbroken. But it does not allow the geodesic to change shape much. And because of the structure and alignment of the skeleton and the connective tissue, the range of shapes that can hold the hard pung are limited. So hard pung needs the lower back to be relatively straight, whereas soft pung only needs the lower back to be able to be straight and change shape. Hard pung increases weight and pressure. It leads to an increasing bulk effect and creates these random vectors of force that can disrupt your balance. Soft pung reduces the pressure, decreases the bulk effect, and preserves the balance by perfecting and changing the centripetal geodesic. Bulk pung can be used offensively and defensively, as can soft pung, but hard pung is easier to feel and predict and adapt to. Soft pung is totally responsive, nearly impossible to feel, and in its highest form, totally unpredictable. I'm just getting started. I really want to talk about more of the ways that you can apply this and the way that it works with, say, judo or jiu-jitsu or joint locks and boxing and grappling and of course tuisha, pushing hands. And also the way that this affects you psychologically, because pung is not just a physical thing. It transfers into everything that you do. It is your attitude as well as your physical and mental alignment. It's your response to all kinds of things in your life. So it gets very, very interesting. Well, to me, anyway. I hope it gets interesting to you. I'm going to publish this video, and after spending a day or two editing it, and we'll see where it goes. If there's interest in it, I might do some follow-up on this idea, and I'll have to build some apparatus so that I can show you a little bit more about how things work. I won't be having any training partners here for a few months, and I won't be doing classes in person probably until the fall of 2021. So a lot will depend on the rollout of vaccines. Once, I suppose, 90 to 95% of the population is vaccinated, then we'll be able to start getting back to normal. But till then, it's just me in my little room. Thank you for your support, everybody. I really appreciate the donations and the subscriptions and the positive feedback. Thank you. The emails and the phone calls and things that I've been getting have been really helpful in encouraging me to continue with this work. It's the online videos are not quite paying the rent yet, but we're getting there, and I really appreciate everything that everybody's doing to pitch in. Thank you. Very good. More practice.